Your team is critical to your success as a business owner, yet most business owners are surprised when people resign and don't actually understand how their team are feeling, how motivated they are, or whether they have concerns about their work. Now, this is a big problem given the cost of employee turnover, let alone the cost of low motivation and low productivity. Tune into this episode where we discuss a little-used tool that ultra-successful tradie and contracting business owners use to ensure their teams are happy, motivated, and productive.
You know, it's hard enough to know what's going on with your team when you're working with them day in, day out as a small business. But, how do you actually track this as you grow?
And often you get blindsided by issues that you didn't see coming. But if you had been taking a bit of a temperature check, you'd know that writing was on the wall for a while.
And capitalize on the things they like. If someone likes something, then you can do more of it. You can make it an even better place to work.
And to have a system for how to run this, you need to have your finger on the pulse with them to build a killer culture, a place where people love to work, place where they're productive, and importantly, a place where your team members actually want to refer their mates and their friends and other people that they know to actually work with you, because when that happens, you know you're in the right spot. Welcome to the podcast. Tony Fraser-Jones, your host here with my co-host Phil Smith.
G'day, mate.
How are you, man?
G'day, trusty sidekick as always.
Trusty sidekick indeed. Let's get kicking, bro. What are we on to today?
Well, we're talking about how you can't build a successful business without a good team. So most owners of businesses are going to find that their team is one of the biggest frustrations as they grow. It's hard enough to know what's going on with your team when you're working with them day in, day out as a small business. But, how do you actually track this as you grow? So, you might not even see your team members for days on end, and it's just harder to keep a finger on the pulse.
Yeah, and if you don't have your finger on the pulse, it's very difficult to improve things or fix things, and often you get blindsided by issues that you didn't see coming. But if you had been taking a bit of a temperature check or whatever, you'd know that stuff wasn't right. It's like the relationship where it's a big surprise to you all of a sudden, but if you actually look back on things, it was probably writing was on the wall for a while.
Yes.
So the team can often be like that. And effectively, you have to ask your team where they're at. You have to actually do some digging to find out how they're feeling, where they're at with things. And staff surveys are a really crucial tool here, and that's something we're going to dig into today. And to have a system for how to run this and why it is actually so important, particularly as you grow a business. Ultra successful people are really dialed in with their team, and you need to have your finger on the pulse with them to build a killer culture, a place where people love to work, a place where they're productive, and importantly, a place where your team members actually want to refer their mates and their friends and other people that they know to actually work with you, because when that happens, you know you're in the right spot.
Yeah, well, you've created a place where they can perform, which is what it's all about. So
It is.
I'm sure you have a story to kick us off.
I do have a story about this, and back to World War II, the Battle of Midway. And during World War II, the United States Navy was at a turning point in the Pacific Theatre. And the Battle of Midway was in 1942, and it was a very important time. So the Japanese Navy really had been really dominant through this period. The US commanders knew that they needed to know where the Japanese planned to be, where they planned to attack. Problem is they didn't know. They didn't know what they didn't know, and so it was very hard to form a plan without knowing what was happening on. But pretty crafty. So the US intelligence community, they'd been intercepting Japanese communications for a while, but a lot of it was encoded. It wasn't. Some of it was incomplete, so they didn't have the whole picture. But they did some pretty clever stuff, and they figured out a location which was labelled AF by the Japanese in these communications. They thought that this was Midway Island, but they weren't 100% sure. And so to test that theory, they were really crafty. What they did, they instructed Midway Island to send an uncoded message saying that the water desalination plant had broken down. And so, sure enough, the Japanese, they took it hook, line, and sinker and revealed in a message that AF was running low on water. And so, bingo, they knew that Midway was the target, and that's what AF was. And so that was a massive piece of information that helped the US Navy actually prepare for that battle, which they won. And, the same thing with our businesses. If we don't have that full information, it's very hard to make a plan. And so you can lose the battle, as it were, with your team because you just don't really know what's going on. And so some intelligence, a little bit of decoding what's happening is super important here, and a staff survey, actually asking people directly, is a great way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we don't run staff surveys, we can run into some issues.
Well, you're flying blind, just like the Navy would have been. It's guesswork, so you don't really know where the team is at, and therefore you don't see issues developing until it's too late. And the big issue is employee turnover. They quit, and that's a big problem. And it might be other things. You may not know that once you've got managers in your business, you might think it's all tickety-boo, but one of your managers is really not performing, and if you're not asking the team and getting feedback from them, you're not going to know. So that's the big problem areas. And then there's also the areas of opportunity. There might be areas you're quite good or doing okay, but you could do better if you really want to be great. And to have a great business, you've got to have a great team. It's, being good is not good enough, really. You really want to be great.
Absolutely.
So I think that's important. And there's a lack of leadership feedback as well. So you might think you're doing a great job. You might think the culture's okay, but you're not getting feedback from where it really is actually. And anyone who's run a decent-sized business will get a surprise from time to time. They think everything's good, but often it's not quite as good as you think, and it's really helpful to know that. And something that I find happens if you don't do this is you won't get very many people referring their friends to work at this place. And what you want, if you've got some winners in your team, you want their friends who are winners also to come and join your team. And we've got many members in our program who, they just get so much referral business, as it were, for team members because they're in a great spot. But if you don't know what sort of spot you're in, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I guess if you're tied all together, if you don't know what's going on and you're not keeping your finger on the pulse, you just have less productivity, less profitability in your business, and that's that's not what you want, right?
That's not why we got into
business.
business.
Not why we're here.
Yeah, that's it. So on the other hand, if we're running staff surveys, there's some pretty big upsides.
There is. So visibility on the real issues, you know what's going on. I think the term forewarned is forearmed. So if you have an inkling what's happening before it becomes a fully blown issue, then you can do something about it. And also it allows you to take the areas of your business which are going okay and make them great. And you'll get feedback on your leadership, so you can keep improving. You can keep improving on the culture because that is a constant, never-ending process. And what I love is you really dial this in, you'll get more referrals for people to work in your business. And that's gold, in which ultimately all of that packaged together, better productivity, better motivation, more satisfied employees, and ultimately more profitability, and just a better business for you. The team is crucial. And so, you really need to know where they're at, and this will make a big difference.
Yeah, it's really the key to the whole puzzle. So
is.
Where should we start, man? Why do surveys?
Well, he's dead just now, mate, old Peter Drucker.
Here we go.
But he said you can manage what you can measure, and you get what you measure. And so it's the same with your team. If you don't measure where they're at and you don't know, then there's nothing you can do about it. So really, staff surveys are about getting some information about where your team are at, what's upsetting them, what's frustrating them, what are they liking about your business, so that you can fix it and make the business better. It's really that simple.
Well, and capitalize on the things they like. If someone likes something, then you can do more of it. You can make it an even better place to work.
Double down.
Yeah, double down. I mean, it's the same with anything, right? You want to find the problems, but you want to find the good stuff too, because you can really augment that and a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. If you're listening, you go, look, I've got 3 guys in my team, and I kind of know everything that's going on. And that might be the case. I'd probably challenge you on that. It's probably not as perfect as you think, but you'll have a better idea on a person-by-person basis than someone has a team of 20 or 50 for sure. But if you're absolutely serious about growing a great team, then this is a very powerful tool. And we see our members who have $1 million plus profit businesses, high 6-figure profit businesses, they do this because they just know how important it is to drill into where the team is at. And they also realize that look, when you turn staff over, when they leave, the cost is astronomical.
Yeah,
it's a hidden cost. You don't really see it as such, but there's a lot of research on this, and the research says that for your lower level employees, then it's probably 30 to 50% of their salary or wage that it costs you when they turn.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's lots to that. I mean, you've got obviously re-employment costs, listing job ads. You've got time spent, obviously going through interview processes again. You've got all the costs associated with that, plus any cost that it actually takes to get the person offboarded when they leave. But then there's all the opportunity cost of being without that employee in the meantime, and what they could have brought in revenue and profit. So I mean, it gets more costly, right?
And the opportunity cost is also the time that you have to invest in the process, or your key people if your business is larger, in actually hiring new people. And hiring is a time-hungry job if you do it properly.
Yeah, and I think more than time, man, like it's energy as well.
Headspace.
And I think energy and headspace is such an undervalued resource. Like, we don't give it enough time really in our head to think about the time in our head, but that time is super costly. Like the energy, the drain, the frustration. When you lose that, it actually really stuffs other things in your business because you're not able to, turn up as your best self. you're not feeling good, you're bringing that crap home with you, and it's really affecting everything. And there's a major dollar figure attached to that too. So I mean, it's costly, dude, and it gets worse, right?
It does get more costly. So you think that's a low-level employee for a mid-level person, operations manager, key pricing person, marketing person, admin manager, even a high-level tradesperson, foreman, 125 to 150% of their salary in cost
when you turn them over.
And then for very high level, we're talking general manager level, it's 150 to 300%. Like, it's astronomically costly. And so you want to have the finger on the pulse with your team and know what's going on, so you can actually plan ahead and win the battle with the right information.
And when it comes to that, I think the big thing with surveys is that it gives you that early indicator of problems, because a lot of the time when someone comes forward with a problem unprompted, it's because it's been on their mind for months, like even potentially years. Like we've I've definitely, I'm sure you have too, I've been through situations where I've had people working under me and they come forward with a problem and say, hey, how long's this been bugging you? And they go, oh, since about a year ago. And you think, whoa, damn, like we could have nipped this in the bud a long time ago. And a lot of the time, those problems get really exacerbated and blown out of proportion inside of that person's head, and they form all these backstories about what's going on and just really catastrophize the whole thing, when if you dealt with it right at the start, firstly, it wouldn't have been catastrophized yet, so you're dealing with the molehill, not the mountain. And secondly, it's still fresh. It hasn't really baked into a resentment yet. It's an annoyance, not a resentment. So you need that early indicator of any problems or unsettlement so that you can deal with it quickly and promptly before it becomes more of an issue. And so doing these surveys is a proactive way of surfacing issues before they become bad enough for someone to actually come forward unprompted. And so it's very, very important. And if you're doing them regularly enough, then hopefully you're surfacing everything you possibly can in the quickest amount of time. It also highlights a lot of opportunities to improve. So, like I said earlier, you want to find out the things that are not going so well, the problems, but you also want to find out what's going great, because if someone wants to work for you for a specific reason, like, hey, I love that we do a 4-day work week or something like that, and you get feedback on this, then you're able to really promote that. And that could be a major draw card to attract other employees. It could be something where maybe some people are on a 4-day work week, others are not, and you can offer that to the ones who are not and really get some benefit out of that. Maybe they say, I really love the way that we communicate with clients and the non-negotiable standards we put into our customer service. It makes me feel like I'm part of a professional organization, and I really love being able to be seen as the premium service provider in our area. If someone said something like that, you're able to be like, oh, cool. Well, firstly, that was a good idea, which is good for the validation of the whole strategy. But secondly, maybe you can put even more emphasis onto those non-negotiables. Maybe you tweak them up, make them even better, and get some other feedback from the team and see what you could do even better, and you can really augment that, and it could result in more sales, more staff satisfaction. Like, there's so much opportunity in doubling down into the things you're good at. Like Mike McAllowitz talks about when you do survey your staff or your clients, a lot of the time what you want to do is go fix all the problems, but actually if you double down on the things they like, often that makes the problems insignificant. So I think massive opportunity to see what you're doing well, and lean into that as well.
Yeah, and you wrap this all together, it will improve your profitability, your productivity of your team. You have a more motivated team. It's just better for business. And as we mentioned, you need to get really super serious about growing your team and the culture in your business. If you want to have a business that makes you money, gives you time and freedom, because your team is like the vehicle for setting your time free. The people who can pick up the slack, do the work when you're not there. And if you want them to do it effectively, you need to know where they're at. So very, very powerful.
Yeah, and if you want to be serious, you're going to do this by design and not by default.
Yep.
So you could end up with a lot of benefits just by default. They happen randomly, and that's cool. But when you're actually taking that temperature check of the team, you're able to proactively make change and augment benefits. And as a result, you're doing this by design. So you're creating what you want to create in the way you want to create it and getting the result that you wanted, which is the whole game, really.
That's right.
So I suppose on that note, you really need to make this into a system. Like, you can't just wing it. You can't just occasionally randomly ask people how they're going. You need to have a system so that you're getting the right information in the right cadence, so in the right frequency.
Timely manner.
Yeah. So the first one that we recommend is a thing called monthly eNPS surveys. So eNPS stands for Employee Net Promoter Score. And in previous episodes, we've talked about Net Promoter Score before as a satisfaction gauge that you might use with your clients. But eNPS is a satisfaction gauge you can use with your team. So essentially what it is, it's a very, very simple process, but this has been, very, very well researched, and it works, just trust me. Basically what it is it asks the employee one question, which is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to refer a friend to work here? And so what they're going to do is, 1 obviously is not at all.
Never.
10 is like absolutely. And each score means something. So if they score you between a 1 and a 6, basically that means they're what's called a detractor. So anywhere in that zone means that they are very, very unhappy. And so a lot of the time people will say something like 6, and they think that they're actually giving a decent answer. 5 would be 50%, so 6 is 60%. Hey, I'm on the good side of the equation. But actually that means there's a 40% chance that they're not happy, which is massive. And this is actually just them trying to be kind about the fact that they're not loving it. So anything up to 6 is bad, and people are unhappy.
There's no emotional commitment to the business with a 6 or below.
Yeah, absolutely. So 9s and 10s are pretty self-explanatory. Now 9s and 10s are what's called a promoter, and that's somebody who is really happy, and they'd not only be willing to refer, but they're really happy. They're loving the way things are going. They're content in their job, and they feel like they're doing well.
And I think the 9s and 10s are not a flight risk. They're not a churn risk. The below 6s. 100%.
They're not just a flight risk. It's like they've probably already looking for jobs. Yeah. But this is where it gets interesting. It's the 7s and 8s. So 7s and 8s seem like good scores, but actually those ones there are still an issue. So someone who's a 7 or an 8, they're not an active detractor. They're not probably going and bagging you all around town. They're not actively potentially looking for jobs. But a 7 or an 8 is also not stoked. They're actually not happy. And so someone that gives a 7 or an 8 is somebody who's definitely worth looking into. And so when you're doing the eNPS survey, if you're getting 7s and 8s, you do have an issue. There's something to dig into there. The person who's giving a 7 or an 8 probably doesn't come forward with their problem. They're probably not vocal about it, but there's definitely unrest, there's definitely unsettlement, there's definitely unhappiness. And so what you basically do is you send this out to all of your team. They fill in the survey. It's anonymous, so you can't tell who's who, and we'll dig into that in a little bit. But what you'll end up with is an overall score, and basically the temperature check of how happy people are just from one simple question. So it's very powerful.
Yeah. So that's the first part of that process, is the temperature check on a monthly basis.
Yeah, this one's monthly, and again, being so simple, it's very easy. We set this up on an automatic email that goes out to the whole team once a month. It takes literally like less than a second to complete the entire process, and it just gives us a temperature check every month of how we're going in terms of staff satisfaction, which really leads to the next type.
So you do the monthly temperature check, and then you want some more in-depth information that you can really work with, because the temperature check gives you a feel for how you're going. Either you've got an issue or you don't.
Well, it's quantitative.
It's quantitative. So you do a quarterly. We recommend our members do it quarterly. Possibly you could do it 6 monthly, but I think if you're really serious about this, quarterly is good. A quarterly in-depth survey where you dig into some more detail around what people are happy with or not happy with. And you don't have to make the survey up. The good news is there's a survey that we recommend to our members, and we've used it ourselves. It's called the Gallup Q12. It's a brilliant survey. It's 12 questions which smash all the key points about employee satisfaction, motivation, and productivity, and what drives that. And this is research-based. So there's a bunch of research around what are the key things that will drive people's satisfaction and productivity. You can pay to do this. It's pretty simple. They'll set it all up for you, and you can send it out to your team. And so some of the questions they're super good, and we can go through some of them. Like questions are things like, number 1, I know what is expected of me at work.
Yeah, crucial.
So that's absolutely critical. The research shows if people know what's expected of them, they're way happier and more motivated. If it's unclear, if they don't have good job descriptions, if they don't have KPIs, if they don't have clear instructions from their leaders, it creates uncertainty, ambiguity, anxiety, and it leads to a lack of performance and satisfaction.
Well, as a general rule, winning employees are happy employees. If people are not winning, or they don't feel that they're winning in their role, they're going to be unhappy. Like, it doesn't matter how good your culture is. If you're an awesome, fun culture of losers, no one wants to be in that team.
It's not going to be fun.
Nah, and so the thing is you need to know what's expected of you at work so that you can win. Like, it's like trying to play a game only you don't know the rules, and then you're just going to get frustrated because you can't win. And so I think in this case, like knowing what's expected of you is crucial. And this comes down to, really clear job descriptions. So we get our members to do that. But again, the key word here is clear. Like I saw a job description for an ops manager the other day, and it had one of the points is effectively manage the gross profit on jobs. And while that's a cool outcome, it doesn't really mean anything. It's like, what are they actually going to do to affect that result? And it wasn't clear. And so that's not clear, and therefore they don't know what's expected of them. They know that they're supposed to achieve the GP that was priced for, but by doing what? And so how do they win? How do they know that they're doing a good job? And as a result, if you don't know what you're doing and you're not winning, it causes a lot of frustration, a lot of angst, and I think ultimately unhappiness. So very important.
Another question is, I have the right materials and equipment to do my work right. Well, that's a pretty powerful question. You think about your tradespeople. If they have a van that keeps breaking down, they don't have the tools they need, or the tools are they're checked out by someone else and they can never find them, or they're lost all the time. Things like that will have a pretty big impact on someone's satisfaction in their job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so those are the things you would look at. Another thing is, in the last 7 days, I've received recognition or praise for doing for good work.
This one gets me, man.
Massive.
Yeah.
I mean, if people aren't getting recognition and praise, that's going to really damage their experience of the job, and their productivity will fall, their motivation, their satisfaction falls.
Well, and not just that, I think a lot of the time we overestimate how much praise we give. Like we'll talk to people and we'll say, hey, do you think you're praising your team enough? Do you think you're giving them positive recognition? Yeah, of course, I'm doing that all the time. And then, you ask the team, they're like, nah, I haven't had one piece of praise in a long time. When we run this with our team, I know for me, like this is something which comes up, like I always think I'm praising the team a lot, but it actually doesn't matter what I think. It only matters what they're perceiving, and perception is reality. If they don't feel like they're being praised, it actually doesn't matter if I feel like I'm praising. The thing is that they feel under-recognized. And so you need to make sure that you're investing in this. And I think one thing I find really helpful if you want to boost that result up is to think about the way you praise someone. So rather than coming in and saying, hey, good job, well done, like that doesn't mean anything. So instead it's like saying, hey, you dug that trench perfectly. Like I've never seen somebody dig such a tidy trench in such a short amount of time. Like that was amazing. Like you dug a better trench than me. I can and this is the key, I can really see you've been working hard on that and it's paying off. So that's a cumulative piece of praise which shows that you're constantly improving, and it keeps them in a state of momentum, which actually makes them feel like they're getting somewhere. So I didn't just luck it. I didn't just do a good job one time. I'm cumulatively getting better every day, and that starts to stick with them a lot more. So again, it might be that you're doing it, but maybe you're not doing it very well.
For example, another question is, at work, my opinions seem to count. And so that's super important. If people feel like they have no say in anything, they feel lack of motivation, they feel lack of control, and that damages their productivity and their satisfaction. So your managers, you as a manager and leaders, can actually work on that. So it's another thing. I have a best friend at work. The research shows that people want strong social connections at work. Now, a best friend at work doesn't mean it's your best buddy ever.
Yeah.
But it means you have good friends at work that you enjoy hanging out with and you have a great time.
Yeah.
And so when you do this survey, and if that's low across the board, then you're like, we got a bit of work to do there. Either we're employing people who just aren't that much fun, or we're not doing anything to encourage social connections, or we're just working the guys so hard it's all work and no play. And so you can work on that stuff, and it'll actually help you build a better team. So that's super powerful. If you
think about that, it's like if you work full time, you're spending more of your waking hours at work with your colleagues than with anybody else. And so if you don't feel like there's at least someone at work that, and again, people can take best friend too literally, but the way that I interpret this is it's like it's someone that you feel you can be truly honest and transparent with, that you can share things with, that you can share difficulties with, you can share joy with, that you can really connect with, and just be yourself. And I think that's really what it means. And so at this point, it's like if you're working 40 hours a week with a team that you don't feel anyone in that team you can be honest and open with, you can't share any difficulties from your life, and you can't share any wins or significant milestones, then you actually feel really alienated. You feel very alone, and that's not a good way to be. So, I think that question is very important. Like the way that people feel about the connections they have at work is crucial to their satisfaction.
Yeah. So there's 12 questions in the Gallup. Don't make up a survey yourself. Just use this. Make your life simple. Leverage their effort. And the thing is that you do the temperature check with the eNPS, and then you use these questions to really get deep into what what might be the issues or the challenges or the opportunities that you've got to improve, because the 12 things in there are the 12 needs that managers need to meet to actually improve employee productivity and motivation. They're there. That's the research. It's all there. And what's cool about Gallup is that there's a bunch of comparison data. It's absolute gold.
It puts it into dashboards for you.
There's thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses who have done this. And so you'll see where you rank relative to other businesses.
Yeah.
And so if you're getting threes in one particular area, it'll probably say, look, you're in the 40th percentile for that question, which means you've got a lot of improvement to do.
It also compares your results as you do these over time to your previous surveys, so you can see whether you're trending up, trending down, and then it actually prompts things that you should do as a result of your data. So if you've trended down in one of the questions, it'll suggest maybe you could do this activity, or maybe you could ask the team this question, or maybe you could do this kind of team building exercise. So it actually doesn't just get the data, it tells you what to do as well, which is super handy.
It's killer. So do the temperature check with the eNPS, use the Gallup every quarter. When you're getting serious about your team, do this, and as you said, it'll give you a prescription for the things that you need to put in place. It's very, very powerful. So the system is important here.
Yeah.
And then obviously the last part of the system is you use this information with your management team, and if there's issues across the board, then you as a management team, you need to start being more aware of what's going on. You'll start noticing stuff. You'll start seeing people operating in certain ways, and you'll become attuned to the fact that this is probably an issue for them. And you can start, having discussions with your team about these things, and so that feedback process starts. But we'll get into that in a minute as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think the next point is about anonymity. So it's like, do you make this anonymous or not? And so I think as a short answer, yes, you make it anonymous. If you don't make it anonymous, people won't answer honestly. And that's, again, why using set questions with set answers or number ratings is really, really key, because the minute I have to write a sentence, it actually starts really giving away who wrote it. I've definitely had some funny ones in the past, and you could totally tell who wrote it based on the way they write.
You could tell my responses, couldn't you? Because none of it
would be spelt wrong.
It will be spelt wrong.
Yeah,
and, make any sense.
And there'd be some weird innuendos. But anyway, hey, point is do you go anonymous or not? So in this case, we go anonymous, because that way you get the most truthful answers, which is therefore the most useful. And but one thing that I would recommend is to, obviously when your team's small, it might be you and 3 or 4 others, it's just completely anonymous. But as your team grows and you start to have, a fair amount of people, 20 plus, it's really important you start to segment the results by department. So in that case, it is anonymous. You don't know who said any one particular thing, but you do know which department the results came from. So, you might have your admin department, which is, people that are working in the office, office manager, schedulers, invoicing, accounts, that kind of stuff. You'll have, operations, and you might have multiple departments here, like your, commercial guys that are on the tools, your residential guys are on the tools, or however you split up your on the tools team. And you might have, pricing could even be a department, depending how many people are in there. But one way or another, you do want to split that up. And that way you know that, this set of results came from the guys that are working in this area, or the girls working in this area. And as a result, that way you can actually use the data. Because if it's just one big generalization of, 20, 40, 50, 100 people, it's like, where do you actually look or go to fix something? Which department is in trouble, which manager is potentially underperforming. Whereas if you can segment by department, you start to get a clearer view of where you should focus, and that makes the data truly usul.
Yeah, I think that's massive. So it's a trade-off of anonymity to usefulness, and so you should never be able to identify a person specifically. So if the team's so small that you could do that, you probably need to make it bigger.
Yeah.
But you definitely chunk it down, because then you can use it. I think that's massive. And when you get the results, this is the key thing. If you're going to do this, you got to be serious about it, and you've actually got to take the results seriously and do something with them. Because if you do this and it just goes into the black hole of the big black management box and the team never sees anything from it, it will have a really damaging effect on culture and on the relationship you have with your employees. So you have to actually take responsibility for the results, and that means you need to discuss the results with the team. You need to share the results with the team so they can see what actually came up and where things are at. And then as I mentioned earlier, use those results to observe more closely the behaviours of the team. And so if you notice in your pricing team, maybe you've got 4 or 5 people in your pricing team, you've got a reasonable sized team in there, and you see that there's a lot of issues there, then you start to just notice what's going on there and see what they might be, and you can actually start managing them there. But you've got to take action as well. Like if the best friend at work is low for everyone and you do nothing about it, you're really going to damage things. You actually need to start putting some social events in place. Or, for example, there's a question that says, there's someone at work who encourages my development. That's one of the questions. If you're low on that, then you need to start spending time with your team talking about their brightness of future, what they want to train towards, what goals they have for personal, professional as well. Because if you don't, then it's really going to damage the culture.
Yeah, and don't bury your head in the sand. I think a big thing with this is be open-minded and don't discard results. So when you're looking at the results, if you score badly in an area, it's really easy to get defensive. In fact, it's quite a natural reaction and to say, oh, well, it's just because they're all entitled, or oh, they all want unrealistic things, or oh, well, they probably misinterpreted that question. And I think just try to silence that defensive voice in your head and just think about what the data's telling you, because it's not trying to criticize you, it's trying to show you an area you could improve and really, really benefit from. So I think try to be open-minded. Don't take a defensive stance. Like if you score badly, that's a huge opportunity. It's not a criticism. And so if you see it that way, this whole exercise becomes super useful. Whereas, if you get defensive, so don't bother then. If you don't want to hear the results, don't ask the questions.
Yeah, if you go back to the story at the start, you could lose the battle. The war could have turned out differently without that right information about what AF actually was.
Yeah.
And it's the same in your business. You could lose a bunch of team members, and imagine how stressful that is. Like, the pain of that is way bigger than the pain of having to look in the mirror and realize, actually, I've got some work to do as a leader.
Yeah.
In fact, great leaders love that. They love to look in the mirror because they know that that's the problem and that's the opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So some good stuff there. Let's play.
Let's do it. Serious results in business require us as business owners to get serious about team performance and culture. If you don't measure this stuff, you are literally flying blind. And staff surveys become more and more important the larger your business grows and the more team members you have. It's time to start measuring. Thanks heaps for listening. We'll catch you all again next time.
See you later.
Congratulations on being part of a select group of savvy business owners who are taking their businesses to the next level. And to help you on your journey, don't forget to check out our show notes for a copy of our free book, The Profitable Tradie, and other valuable resources. Thanks for being a part of this special group, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Profitable Tradie podcast.